dealing with the National School Boards Association request for intervention from federal agencies and law enforcement and other concerns that they have.
Without objection.
Yeah. General Garland, regarding your October 4th school board memo, last week you said the memo was for law enforcement audience, despite it being on your public website as a press release. As a result of your memo, local school officials and parents may not speak up in these meetings out of fear that the federal government will do something to them. So that's a poisonous, chilling effect. Apparently that letter wasn't actually supported by organization, but was sent by 2 unauthorized staff. So last week the organization disavowed it, since you and the White House based your memo on this delegitimized letter. I assume you're going to revoke your extremely divisive memo that you said was instigated because of that letter. That's a question.
Senator, the memo, which is referred to as one page, it responds to concerns about violence, threats of violence, other criminal conduct. That's all it's about. And all it asks is for federal law enforcement to consult with, meet with local law enforcement to assess the circumstances, to strategize about what may or may not be necessary, to provide federal assistance if it is necessary.
Presumably, you wrote the memo because of the letter. The letter is disavowed now. So you're going to keep your memo going anyway, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Senator, I have the letter from NSBA that you're referring to. It apologizes for language in the letter, but it continues its concern about the safety of school officials and school staff. The language in the letter that they disavow is language was never included in my memo and never would have been. I did not adopt every concern that they had in their letter. I adopted only the concern about violence and threats of violence, and that hasn't changed.
Who in the Justice Department was responsible for drafting your polarizing October 4th memo?
I signed the memo, and I worked on the memo.
The press release accompanying your memo mentions that the National Security Division will get involved in school board investigations. Is the Justice Department National Security Division really necessary for keeping local school boards safe if parents aren't domestic terrorists? And if the Patriot Act isn't being used, why is the National Security Division involved at all? This kind of looks like something that would come out of some communist country, expansive definition of national security.
The memo is only about violence and threats of violence. It makes absolutely clear in the first paragraph that spirited debate about policy matters is protected under our Constitution. That includes debate by parents criticizing school boards. That is welcome. The Justice Department protects that kind of debate. The only thing we're concerned about, Senator, is violence and threats of violence against school officials, school teachers, school staff. Just like we're concerned about those kind of threats against senators, members of Congress, election officials. In all of those circumstances, we are trying to prevent the violence that sometimes occurs after threats.
Your memo stated that the Justice Department is opening dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting, assessment, and response. What is the department doing with tips it receives on this dedicated line, and what are you doing with those parents who have been reported?
The FBI gets complaints, concerns from people around the country for all different kinds of threats and violence. That's what this is about, a place where people who feel that they've been threatened with violence can report that. These are then assessed, and they are only pursued if, consistent with the First Amendment, we have a true threat that violates federal statutes or that needs to be referred to a state or local government, federal agency, local law enforcement agency for their assistance.
On the other hand, are there criminal investigations being opened for instances where school officials are trying to assess private data of parents with opposing views on critical race theory?
I don't know about that, but the Justice Department certainly does not believe that anybody's personal information should be accessed in that way. If there's a federal offense involved or a state or local offense involved, then of course those should be reported.
The nonpartisan Justice Department Inspector General established that Andrew McCabe lied under oath to FBI investigators. He lied under oath to the Justice Department Inspector General. It should also be noted that McCain leaked government information to the media and then called the New York and Washington FBI field offices and blamed them for the very leaks that he caused. Under your leadership, instead of punishing him, the department reinstated his retirement, expunged his records as part of the settlement. He will reportedly receive $200,000 in retirement back pay, and his attorney will reportedly receive $500,000 in legal fees. So it seems to me that that's beyond incredible. So, General Garland, did you authorize the McCain settlement? And if not, who did?
Senator, the McCabe settlement was the recommendation of the career lawyers litigating that case based on their prospects of success in the case. The case did not involve the issues about lying. It involved a claim that he was not given amount of time necessary to respond to allegations. And the litigators concluded that they needed to settle the case because of the likelihood of loss on the merits of that claim. The Inspector General's report still stands. We have not questioned in any way the Inspector General's findings. The reference with respect to false statements was made to the Justice Department in the previous administration and declined in the previous administration. The only issue here was an assessment of litigation merits.
Short follow-up. Do you agree with the taxpayer, since you didn't, somebody else authorized it, do you agree with the taxpayer picking up a multi-million-dollar bill for someone that lied under oath to government officials?
I think the assessment made by the litigators was that the bill to the taxpayers would be higher if we didn't resolve the matter as it was resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.